Hello, hello everyone. Good morning. This is Sheikh Benazir, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Barjora College. I welcome you all on the day 2 of this ongoing webinar. Thank you for joining this webinar on interdisciplinarity, rereading literary text. We have today's lecture session commencing with our doc, expert speaker, Mr. Shukhendu Das. Mr. Shukhendu Das teaches in the Department of English, Bankura University, India. He is pursuing his PhD on Patrick White and visited University of Wollongong, Australia in the capacity of visiting doctoral fellow 2017. His research interests include exploration history of Australia, critical theory, gerontology, Anthropocene, transnationalism. His two forthcoming books from Cambridge Scholars Publishing UK include Reimaging Yeats, Contestations and Negotiations, co-edited, and Shakespeare and the Cultural Politics of Gerontology. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Hello, sir.
Yes, yes, I can hear you.
Yes, thank you so much, sir, for joining us, and over to you, sir.
Yes. Good morning, everybody, and I'm really grateful and indebted to Professor Benazir, who invited me to deliver this lecture. So I'll be brief. I won't take much time. The title of my lecture is Politics, Violence, and Surveillance in Harold Pinter, The Birthday Party. And now, before I would like to begin with the growing up of an attuned artist. That means what was happening in Europe in the rest and in the rest of the world in Pinter's childhood. That means when Pinter was born and in his childhood days. This actually shows the how an attuned artist perceived the world around him, and this has a bigger influence on his writing. Uh, Harold Pinter, we all know that was born in 1930 in Hackney. So you all know all these facts. I'm just, I mean, recapitulating certain points that are, pertinent and essential to my lecture. It's London. He spent part of his childhood in the middle of the Second World War, so 1939 to 45, this period. He spent part of his childhood in the middle of the Second World War, and Pinto remembers how they had to frequently vacate their house due to bombing. Would you please switch off your microphone? Yes, Benazir madam, do you hear me?
Yes, hello.
Yes,
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
yes. Please switch off your microphone because the
Okay,
background
okay,
noise
sir.
is.
Okay,
Yes, yes. One day, Pinter recapitulates. One day, on that day, when he was returning to London, on that day, I got back to London in 1944. I saw the first flying bomb. I was in the street and I saw it come over. There were times when I would open our back door and find our garden in flames. So this is how Pinter remembers the atrocities and the violence he experienced in his childhood. Could anyone seriously hold that it is irrelevant or coincidental that Pinter lived through? Indeed, his life was almost concurrent with the darkest and the most brutalized century in recorded history. Of course, certainly. The two world wars, the horrors of Stalin, the Holocaust of Hitler, the disastrous Great Leap of Mao, brutal colonial wars in Africa, and the protracted threat of atomic annihilation during the Cold War. So the Cold War extended for a long period of time, 1947 to 1991. Cold War, atomic annihilation during the Cold War surely creep into a receptive mind at some level. They certainly generate an infecting atmosphere within the moral and outlook of Western culture as a whole, which could not but affect the creative imagination of an attuned artist. This may not occur in the surface representations of Pinter's work, but the aftershocks they emit through the values, beliefs, and attitudes of the societies in which in which in which he lived and thought surely passed through and to some extent molded his creative intelligence. Though self-consciously distances his praise from political overtones in early phase of his career. So Pinter's career could be divided into roughly two or three, phases. The first phases, his plays are labeled as comedies of menace. You all know that, but his writings or his plays, began to deal with, I mean, explicit political issues in his later plays. That means 1980s onwards, essays to essays, and there are many. Silence in the Mountain, and there are many such plays which actually overtly deals with international politics. So it is hardly, though self-consciously, yes, I am lost here. Though self-consciously distances his space from political overtones in the early phase of his career, it is hardly possible to agree with Pinter. But initially, he distances himself from any political commitment, or he does not. He says that he does not subscribes to any political ideology, right? And there is nobody. There is no such. Overt connotations in his plays. Many of Pinter's plays develop from the moment of intrusion, when privacy has been invaded and a threatening situation ensues. This is the subject of his first play, The Room. In The Birthday Party, the two strangers, Goldberg and McCann, appear to hunt for Stanley in a seaside boarding house where Stanley has sought refuge with Meg and Peter. It is clear from their clandestine talks that they are on a secret mission. With the mention of two strangers from Meg, the paranoid response of Stanley begins. The question is, what is it that Stanley is scared of? Why have Goldberg and McCann come to hunt for Stanley? But what made him flee his own home and place? This is the question. Why has he sought refuge in the boarding house in the remotest corner of London? The problem is no convincing. The problem is that the problem with, Harold Peter, which I'm going to explore in detail. The problem is that no convincing answer could be found. And Pinter's theater is a theater of uncertainty, and indeterminacy. Pinter writes in Writing for the Theater in 1962. Because this, I'm quoting Pinter because I think that this actually offers a significant gloss in his creative world. Why is everything uncertain? Why uncertainty hangs over everything? Why why he is so much preoccupied with this theater of indeterminacy and incertitude. Pinter writes, we don't carry labels on our chests, even though they are continually fixed to us by others. They convince nobody. The desire for verification on the part of all of us with regard to our experience and the experience of others is understandable but cannot always be satisfied. I suggest there can be no hard distinction between what is real and what is unreal. nor between what is true and what is false. A thing is not necessarily either true or false. It can be both true and false. A character on the stage who represent no convincing argument or information as to his past experience, his present behavior, or his aspirations, nor give a comprehensive analysis of his motives is as legitimate and as worthy of attention as one who alarmingly can do all these things. The more acute the experience, the less articulate its experience. Now, this is the world of Harold Pinter because everything is uncertain. Because Pinter thinks that certainty is a myth, right? And not all facts could be verified, and we will find that sometimes unverified truths pass for truths in Pinter's place, unverified facts. Okay, and Pinter's characters take resort to fictional reminiscences. Okay, the way they reminiscent, it appears that that all these things happened with them in their past, but those things, whether they happened or not, we don't know. Martin Esslin argues that Stanley did not commit any particular crime. So Goldberg and McCann, they have come to, take Stanley. But why? What did he do? So argues that Stanley did not commit any particular crime. He is a non-conformist artist. We all know that from the very beginning of the play that he is a piano player. At least he claims. And there are many points in the novel he contradicts. In the play he contradicts himself. Okay, whether he was an attuned artist, whether he was a renowned piano player, we don't know it. But he claims, and at the same time he contradicts what he had already said. This is one thing. But if we take this, his words for granted, that he's an artist. Society does not like his opt-out bohemian existence. Hence, he has been subjected to the pressures of conformity. Uh, Other critics argue that Stanley's guilt is being Stanley, right? He is not permitted to be himself, whoever or whatever he is. He has discarded his responsibilities towards himself and others. Perhaps he had betrayed the organization. So we all know that Stanley, and Goldberg, they are the agents of an establishment, but we don't know the nature of this organization. But we can assume, we can fairly understand that it's a very powerful organization. Okay, and its boss is Monty, or the Monty could be some sort of, an authoritarian ruler or dictator, perhaps. And maybe the establishment or political organizations represented by Monty. Society has come back to revenge. Maybe he is an innocent victim of vast bureaucracy like Joseph K. in the Kafka's trial, 1925. Kafka's trial, this novel, it has some, Pinter's The Birthday Party has some striking affinities with Kafka's this trial. But does he merit the torture he has been subjected to? If we take this idea for granted that yes, he has committed some crime, we don't know that the nature of his guilt, okay, or the crime. But the question is, does he merit the torture he has been subjected to during the birthday party? Goldberg and McCann are the agents of the establishment which he had betrayed. It is clear from their clandestine talks that they are on a secret mission. They have come to take Stanley to Monty. They hatched plot to trap Stanley during the birthday, and he has been subjected to bizarre interrogation and brainwashing episodes. The interrogation episodes made him to provide explanations for his discarded responsibilities. So this is all about the nature of uh, Stanley's guilt or the crime he has committed, and the why Goldberg and McCann have come to take Stanley to Monty. In the next section, I shall be dealing with the state power and violence. Okay, and in Pinter's play, we find proliferance of violence, right? And the violence had been perpetuated by the state power. There is a strong vein of violence in many of Pinter's plays, which link them with the rhetorical violence of John Osborne. Look back in anger. Um, Jim is angry tirade. You all know that, and the physical violence of Edward Bond, one of Harold Pinter's contemporary dramatist, who is much more explicit or who is very much vocal about his about the violence that is happening around him, right? So Pinter, and we all know that Pinter was a Jew, and Nazi atrocities created a permanent scar on his mind. Pinter's texts demonstrate how power play operates even in our daily conversations. Okay, we don't, we don't, what should I say, we don't give much attention to our day-to-day conversation. But Pinter, or if you read Pinter's text, you would find that there is a power play in our day-to-day conversation, right? Goldberg and McCann interrogate Stanley until he breaks down. After two scenes of interrogation, where Stanley is rapid fire, with seemingly absurd questions, he loses his ability to speak. The United States Department of the Army defines rapid fire. So rapid fire is a technique for interrogation in the US military department. Okay, so the US military department defines this. The rapid fire, this approach is based on the principle. I quote the proceedings of a United States Department of the Army. The approach is based upon the principles that everyone likes to be heard when he speaks. It is confusing to be interrupted in mid sentence with an unrelated question. In employing this technique, the human, so it's a portmanteau word, human and intelligence. Human collectors ask a series of questions in such a manner that the source does not have time to answer a question completely before the next one is asked. This confuses the source, and he will tend to contradict himself as he has little time to formulate his answer. In many instances, the source will begin to talk freely in an attempt to explain himself and deny human collectors' claims of inconsistencies. In this attempt, the source is likely to reveal more than he intends, thus creating additional leads for further exploitation. So, this is a technique that is used to interrogate criminals. The torrent of questions, to which we find the similar technique in the birthday party, because the torrent of questions that Stanley faces. Okay, excuse me. The torrent of questions to which Stanley is subjected to until he screams and collapses follows this technique, a form of verbal torture in the form of rapid questions, which Stanley is not given time to answer. He is completely destroyed and made myopic, symbolized by his broken glasses. What we find that at the end of the play, Stanley is now a catatonic figure, right? He has been completely destroyed, and we find that his appearance is completely changed. He wears uh, trouser and a shirt. His unkempt, savvy look is gone forever, and he has been made a representative of the bourgeois society. And the broken glass, and there is a stage direction in the play. You will find that he sits on a chair with a broken glass in his hand. I think this broken glass is a very powerful metaphor. It actually it connotes the, I mean the destruction of his artistic insight rather, and also his that he has been turned into a myopic rather. Okay, he loses his articulation of power, and he is completely dehumanized because he loses his articulation of power, which is a definitive mark of human identity. He can no longer pronounce any words. He makes certain incoherent articulate certain incoherent or semiotic words. Perhaps the organization made a potential voice of dissent silent this way. So Stanley is an artist. So his guilt is that he is opt out. Lives a opt out bohemian existence, and he discarded responsibilities towards himself and towards others. Therefore, the state has come to take revenge. Okay, so the New World War, written in 1993, Harold Pinter's Another Play, offers a self-glorifying exchange between two torturers. So this section will be I shall be dealing with the torture in Harold Pinter's torture as a method in Pinter's plays. The one character, Lionel, he says, "I feel so pure," and Jace says, "Well, you are right. You are right to feel pure. You know why, Lionel? Why? Yes, because you are keeping the world clean for democracy." Pinter condemned the role of USA in Pinochet military camp in Cuba in Chile in 1973. Perhaps the look, all these things happened when before after the birthday party was first successfully staged. Okay, but my argument is that but the reflection of those world affairs could be found in his later plays. Okay, but my point is that even in his early plays, we find the projections of the authoritarian ruler, and how I mean Harold Pinter criticizes this authoritarian governance. In 19 okay, perhaps the event had initiated his political activism in his late career, in his later phase of his career. In 1985, while Vaclav Havel was still imprisoned before the Velvet Revolution, he upbraided his own country for being as much as a satellite of America as Czechoslovakia is of Russia. In his Nobel Prize acceptance speech in 2005, Pinter highly criticized neo-imperialist foreign policies of America. This speech, which runs for 46 minutes, Pinter devoted largely to talking about politics and criticized the US policy and policy of those big countries that are trying to gain power through oppression of small countries. The speech is merely a bit of criticism of US government, the state that is constantly using its policy to dominate and subjugate other countries. I quote Pinter: freedom, democracy, and liberation. So these are the three cardinal words: freedom, democracy, and liberation. These terms, as enunciated by Bush and Blair, essentially mean death, destruction, and chaos. The invasion of Iraq was an act of state terrorism. So is Bush and Blair, who are in fact the terrorists. I believe they must be arraigned at the International Criminal Court of Justice and tried as war criminals. Violence permeated overtly in the plays of Edward Bond, another another contemporary artist, and is a very powerful, dramatist. In his preface to his highly controversial play Saved, okay, the storyline of the Saved is that, it's very in nutshell. You all know this, that a baby in perambulator, the baby was stoned to death, right? And therefore, when it was first staged, naturally it received a lot of hostile criticism, and Pinter defended, rather, Edward Bond defended in his preface to Saved. Edward Bond writes. Okay, let me quote a section from this from his preface. Just a second. Yes, Pinter is Edward Bond is talking about this. I mean, disturbing event when a baby in perambulator was stoned by died by when a group of young men stoned him to death. Okay, so clearly the astonishing, uh, clearly the stoning to death of a baby in London Park is a typical English understatement compared to the strategic bombing of German towns, right? So Edward Bond is clearly, I mean, alluding to the events in the Second World War, atrocities that happened during the Second World War. It is a negligible atrocity compared to the cultural and emotional deprivation of most of our children. Its consequences are insignificant. And again, in his preface to Lear, another famous play, it is a, rewriting of Shakespeare's King Lear. Edward Bond writes, I write about violence as naturally as Jane Austen write about manners. Violence shapes and obsesses our society, and if we do not stop being violent, we have no future. People who do not want writers to write about violence want to stop them writing about us and our time. It would be immoral not to write about violence. So this is the most significant, statement made by Edward Bond. It would be immoral not to write about violence. Now, in this section, I shall be dealing with surveillance and paranoia, the rhetoric of surveillance. How the birthday party depicts the, various forms of surveillance. So, while discussing surveillance in literature, George Orwell's 1984 almost invariably comes to our mind. Orwell's 1984 is undoubtedly the most famous cultural expression of the fear of surveillance and powerful premonitions of the totalitarian potentials of any modern bureaucratic state. Evocations of a menacing big brother have become commonplace in discussions about surveillance and control. We all know that Big Brother is watching you. Kafka's novel, The Trial, written in 1925, deals even more directly with what is commonly feared in surveillance society. So surveillance has become, it has now been established as a discipline. Okay, Routledge has published a handbook, Routledge Handbook of Surveillance, and there are, and also we find, proliferation of books, surveillance capitalism, surveillance society. Okay, there are many such, books written on the surveillance and the identity in the digital era. So it tells the story of a man arrested and por- uh, prosecuted by an authority that never reveals itself. Despite his efforts to find out the nature of his alleged crimes, he is never presented before a court, nor is he told what he is accused of. Do you find any, parallel with the plot of the birthday party? Of course. The novel begins. Somebody, the novel begins strikingly. The novel begins this way. Somebody must have made a false accusation against Joseph K. For he was arrested one morning without having done anything wrong. There is an astonishing parallel between these two texts. That means the novel of Kafka, The Trial, and Pinter's The Birthday Party. Pinter also affirmed that I read the trial, Kafka's trial, when I was a lad of 18 in 1948. It has been with me ever since. When brought before an examining magistrate, Joseph K. in Kafka's The Trial exposed the proceedings. So let me quote a section from Joseph K. So Joseph K. says in the novel, there is no doubt that behind all the utterances of this court, and therefore behind my arrest and examination, there stands a great organization. We find the same organization which, seemingly Stanley had betrayed, right? An organization which not only employs corrupt warders and fatuous supervisors and examining magistrates, of whom the best can be said is that they are humble officials, but also supports a judiciary of highest rank with its inevitable vast retinue of servants, secretaries, police officers, and other assistants, perhaps even executioners. I don't shrink from the word. And the purpose of this great organization, and the purpose of this great organization, gentlemen, to arrest innocent persons and start proceedings against them. So this is very scary. Stanley should be put in Joseph K's situation. How? But again, we don't know for certain what has done, right? He has put up what resistance he can against the two intruders who demand quote unquote justice. Franz Kafka's world, dominated by uncertainty, opacity, and inefficiency. Everything in the novel is ambiguous. In Kafka's novel, so is Pinter's. Stanley seems more of a persecuted victim. Goldberg and McCann function as Gestapo, the secret police agents of Hitler, state agents, officers of establishment tyranny. Both Stanley and Joseph suffer from paranoia. There is an interesting article on the birthday party that the title of the article is Paranoid Psychosis and Paranoid Pseudo Community. And this article states that it's a medical case, that Stanley is a victim of paranoia, which is a psychological disease. Okay, in a very loose way, it could be said it's a sort of persecution complex. When you live you live in the fear that you are being followed by somebody and you are always being watched by others, and others are hatching plot against you, right? And the pseudo community, remember Stanley's surname Weber, right? He finds that this community, they have the web everywhere, right? And he's being watched. And at a significant junction in the text, in the birthday party, mm, Stanley despairs that there is nowhere to go, because he can understand that his fate is doomed, or rather his fate is sealed, right? So, okay, so they are the victims of paranoia. Stan, don't let them tell you what to do. This was Peter's advice to Stanley when he was taken to Monty, right, by Goldberg and McCall. It has been become a mantra for Pinter, and Pinter said that this is one of the most important lines he has ever written and lived with it all his damn life. The line puts forward the need for individual resistance in the face of authoritarian force. Don't let them tell you what to do. That means don't allow them to dictate you. Don't lose your individuality. Don't lose your personal integrity in the face of authoritarian government. Even if you face the authoritarian government, the line puts forward the need for individual resistance in the face of authoritarian force. The general atmosphere of mistrust, paranoia, and despotism in the birthday party is commonly associated with a surveillance society. So Stanley is a victim of paranoia, and there is a mistrust because you can all remember that that during the birthday party, which becomes a travesty of the birthday party. I mean, the title is very ironic because what should be a happy social celebration turns into macabre travesty. And that Stanley catches hold of Meg's throat and chokes begin and attempts to choke her. Now, why did he do that? The thing is that Stanley has been taken. I mean, Stanley has been forcefully removed from Meg's shelter, and perhaps Stanley thinks that Meg does not understand the purpose of the arrival of Goldberg and McCann, because she has allowed them to stay with her, and therefore she had aided and abetted to hatch the plot, right? So therefore there is a mistrust in the novel. Paranoia and despotism in the birthday is commonly associated with a surveillance society. The organization of Monty represents a self-sufficient system that totally neglects the consequences it imposes on its outside world, while it immunizes itself against any form of critique by constantly obscuring its inner procedures and decisions. The birthday party is always already. So now I have reached the concluding section of my lecture. So once again, excuse me. The birthday party is always already political. What Winter foretold about America's warmongerism, right? So listen to it carefully. Does this novel have message, or sorry, does this play? Does it have any? How does this uh, text depict our contemporary society, our contemporary governance? Okay, uh, we know that what Winter foretold about America's warmongerism, WikiLeaks guy Julian Assange made them public in 2005. So Winter predicted it much before, and Julian Assange just demonstrated it with his famous WikiLeaks. I would like to end my lecture with an insightful observation of Harold Hobson, because I think that Harold Hobson is one of the most gifted theater critics who who has been able to capture the the cardinal message in the text. So let me quote him. Uh, Harold Hobson writes, Hobson realized the seriousness underlying the comic elements. Pinter at least the birthday party is called comedies of minutes. So there is comic elements, and at the same time, uh, sharply aged, serious elements are there. They are placed side by side. Okay. So Harold Hobson realized the seriousness underlying the comic elements in the birthday party when he reviewed the first production. Harold Hobson writes, Mr. Pinter has got hold of a primary fact of existence. We live on the verge of disaster, right? Now, what is menace? Menace is, undefined terror, right? You are afraid of something, yet you don't know its nature. Why are you, what it is that you are scared of? Okay. So one sunny afternoon, a hydrogen bomb may explode, right? This is one sort of threat. But Mr. Pinters is of subtler sort. So menace could be the protracted threat of atomic annihilation. Okay, that that happened during the Cold War period, because almost all the superpowers during that period, they have the nuclear weapons with them, right? This is one sort of threat, but Mr. Pinters is of subtler sort. It breathes in the air. It can be seen. It cannot be seen, but it enters the room every time the door is opened. There is something in your past. It does not matter. It does not matter what, which will catch up with you. Though you go to the uttermost parts of the earth and hide yourself in the most obscure lodgings in the least popular of towns, one day there is a possibility that two men will appear. They will be looking for you and you cannot get away. Someone will be looking for them too. There is terror everywhere. Now let me explain one thing that that made I mean Pinter was obsessed with the one predominant theme or the phenomena in Harold Pinter's early plays is terror. And Harold Hobson argues that terror is everywhere, and we all know that uh, that that world has already experienced another method of terrorizing the world, which is bio war. Just you spread the virus in certain countries and just demolish the demography, right? Which is called bio. Now, can we say that this terror, this menace, is a one virus? It may be Wuhan virus. Whether China created it or not, I mean, the truth will never come to us. That will never, we will never be able to see the truth. But but what we can get is that that we are always scared of it, even when we live with the most I mean I mean with the technologically sound world. So therefore I think that Pinter's the birthday party is also a commentary on our present situation. So thank you. That's the end of my lecture. Hello.
Yes, hello, sir.
Yes, that's the end of my lecture. And madam,
Okay.
can we? I think that I can take one or two questions if there is anybody to.
Y- yes, sir. Just a second.
Yes, yes,
So there is one question from Jila Madhikari.
yes, yes,
Yeah. Do you
yes.
think Stanley had the power to prevent whatever happened to him?
Yes. Because yes, because Stanley does not have the power to. I mean, yes, sir. Do you think Stanley had the power to prevent whatever happened to him? Yes, Stanley does not have the power to prevent what is happening around him because he is a hapless victim of a large bureaucracy, right? An authoritarian state. But one thing is that he can he can uh, he can he can resist in his own way. How? Because at the very end of the novel, we see that uh, I mean, Peter says him, Stan, don't let them tell you what to do. That means don't allow these, authoritarian rulers dictate you what to do. That means don't lose your integrity. Don't lose your individuality, even in the face of torture. Yes, even in the individual level, he puts up a sort of resistance, but he fails to do. Yes, of course, he in his own way resists the aggression of a totalitarian force. Yes, but but at the same time, he is a pathetic victim of it, right? So that's all.
Okay, sir. There is one more question, which is from Moloy Ghosh.
Yes.
He has written that, sir, will you please elaborate tragic equality in the birthday party?
I don't understand this question. Would you please? Rephrase the question, Molay Ghosh. Could you please rephrase the question? I can't understand. What do you mean by tragic equality? I don't know. Yes. Any other question?
Okay, sir. That's it. Thank you so much for joining.
Yes, I can take more questions if anybody else.
So I can't see any more questions at present.
Uh, yes. Yes. So there is no question, right?
No, sir.
Yes. So thank you, everybody. That's all. And if you have any question, kindly send the question in the write them on the chat box and send me. And of course, mention your email ID here. So even if you think of those questions later, I
You know,
yeah
Molay Ghosh has written
yes yes
tragic quality. I do what?
yes tragic quality in the birthday party, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So yes, of course, it's a tragic. The tragedy lies in the sense that I mean, as I have already discussed, that Stanley, the nature of guilt, right? The nature of crime is cannot be. We cannot understand what he had done to deserve to merit this kind of torture, right? So therefore, the way he has been tortured brutally, the way he has been made to dehumanize himself is very pathetic. So the tragedy lies in that our totalitarian state has been successfully able to silence a potential dissenting voice. And we should not forget that Stanley is an this could the play could be read as a tragedy of an artist. Why? Tragedy of any individual. And Malay, you can connect it in our own time. You know that many artists are being arrested for speaking up against the government, right? Many activists, many journalists, they are threatened, they are killed. So therefore, even in the birthday party, we know that Stanley is not an activist. He is not an activist, but he is a player, right? He's an artist, and artists are men of greater sensibilities, and they have the power. They have the power. They are the rich source of, dissenting voices, right? And society, any authoritarian society, always always any authoritarian society always tries to i mean destroy those potentially disrupting voices, right? This is happening in our contemporary times. You can see it everywhere. So herein lies the tragedy of an artist. How an artist who has the greater vision had been made into a myopic. Brother, you know that at the end of the novel, sorry, at the end of the play, Stanley sits with a broken glass in his hand. What does it symbolize? That his destruction is complete, right? So the glasses are the symbols of the vision, right? The prophetic quality. The artists are prophets in our modern world. This is a very old commonsensical notion, right? But he has been made into a myopic because without glasses Stanley can hardly see anything, right? So this symbolizes that Stanley has been made a myopic, right? So yes, of course, it's a tragedy of an artist, and how an artist is made how is an artist is made a victim of bureaucratic system and authoritarian system. Yes,
Okay, sir.
Benazir, Benazir, this is Oyon Mondal. Uh, can I
yes, ma'am.
talk to Shukendu a bit?
Yes,
Sure,
sir.
sure.
Shukendu, thank you for that wonderful lecture. This is not
Mhm.
my question actually. My
Yes,
colleague Shibotatida, he meant to post this question in the YouTube chat box. Somehow he could not, so he has forwarded it to me. He's working on Pinter and he's very curious to know. He
yes.
puts it like this: please illuminate the difference of representing politics, violence, and surveillance towards the beginning of Pinter's career with the plays written during his overtly political phase. For example, when the plays like Mountain Language, One for the
Mhm.
Road were written. That's his question, Shubham.
Yes. One thing is that Pinter, in his early phase, in his early phase, we find that Pinter is not very much explicit about the. Or his place does not wear any overt political connotations. Yes, in his early phase, right? And Birthday Party was first written in 1957 or 8, so far as I remember. And what we find in his later plays that Pinter became very much, aware of what is happening in his time. He became politically engaged, that I have discussed in paper. He also, engaged in political activism, and also, this kind of activism could be the reflection of this could be found in his later plays, where he talks explicitly about violence, even through his characters. But in the early plays, it is more psychologically subtle, right? In Birthday Party, you won't say that Stanley is a victim of larger bureaucratic system, because the thing is that nothing is certain, everything is uncertain. Okay, nothing has been stated explicitly. We don't know the identity of Goldberg and McCord. Okay, and they failed to establish what Stanley had did in the past, Goldberg and McCord. So therefore, I think that in the early phase of, Harold Pinter's career, plays which are normally labeled as comedies of meanness. Those Pinter had objection to this labeling, right? They are much more subtle, right? And another thing is that because of this subtlety, Pinter resists any, pigeonholing, right, or any rather stereotypical, interpretation, right? On a, you know that uh, the setting of the play is, it does not specify any, historical local, and it does not specify in time. So it is ahistorical, and at the same time, it is timeless. So in his place, there is a Heideggerian sense of ontological uncertainty. The place could be read as modern everyman. Okay, the kind of, uncertainty we face in the so there is a transcendental meaning in transcendental, or rather existential interpretations of his early plays. I think the early plays are much more subtle. There is no explicit reference to any politics like Beckett. Beckett does not make any explicit reference to Holocaust or the atrocities in the world wars, but the subtext. That lies behind the text. The subtext tells a lot about. Tells a lot about the Beckett was very much aware and disturbed of what is happening around him, because he had to spend, a major part of his life. He flew away from the town, from Paris, and he was working in the potato field with the workers. I am talking about Beckett, right? Even though he has experienced, he does not make any explicit reference. The same thing happened in case of Harold Pinter. He also experienced, as I have uh, discussed, that he found in his childhood, he found that their house garden is bombarded, and it has been set on fire, but there is no explicit reference to it. I think that this is a writing. Pinter once said that I want to write because I have to write. So I think that the atrocities that he experienced in the streets of London, and also what was happening around his time, uh, actually created a sort of, what should I say, created a sort of psychosis, right? Created sort of psychosis, and therefore by writing his plays is a sort of, cathartic. Okay, it's a cathartic experience for Harold Pinter, right? So this is the difference, I think. If you have any alternative opinion, you can put forward it.
Thank you, Shubhendra, and
So,
thanks on his behalf as well.
yes, I want to add one thing. So, It's a kind of trauma. It's a kind of trauma that is deeply ingrained in his, unconscious mind. Okay, so in the surface level, you don't find any reflection of it, but at the very subtextual level, you will have enough of it. You will have enough of it that painter is very much disturbed. That one governing theme in his early plays is fear, this fear psychosis, right? So that's all.
Thanks a lot, Shukendu, and thanks on his behalf as well.
Okay, welcome. It's a good question and also insightful question, I think.
Thank you, sir, for joining us and that wonderful session.
Yes, yes, Benazir. So, once again, thank you, and also your wonderful colleagues and your principal, sir, for sending me the invitation and for hosting this wonderful platform. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, Benazir, madam, is our next speaker available? Yes, sir.
Okay, hello.
Yes,
Hello, everyone.
yes,
Sorry to inform you all that due to some network issues, Dr. Arnab Kumar Sinha failed to join us for this session. So the lecture session concludes here. On behalf of the Department of English, Barjora College, and myself, I express my sincere gratitude to our chief guest, Professor Devnarayan Bandyopadhyay, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Bankura University, for sparing his valuable time to have joined with us for this webinar. Next, I would like to thank our principal, sir, Dr. Arun Kumar Roy, for his help in organizing this webinar. Even though our patron and president of the governing body, Dr. Sheikh Sirajuddin, failed to join us for the live session of this webinar, but nonetheless, thanks for the support in helping us organizing the event. I would like to thank our special guest, Professor Sharbojit Bishar, Controller of Examination, Bankura University, for his valuable speech. I thank all our eminent speakers, Dr. Sharmishta Chatterjee Srivastava of Alia University, Mr. Shukhendu Das of Bankura University, Mr. Ayan Mondol of Bankura Christian College for the wonderful lecture session. I thank all the members and professors of our department and college who attended the webinar, and special thanks to Professor Oshim Ruidas, Assistant Professor, Department of Sanskrit, Barjora College, and all the office staff, especially Forest Sir and Debasis Sir, to have worked this up in making this webinar happen. And most importantly, thank you to each one of the participants. Without your support and cooperation and positive participation, this webinar would not have been possible. So thank you everyone again for joining this webinar. And I would also like to mention that the feedback forms will be provided in that WhatsApp group, and it will remain active for 2 hours. Only after the successful submission of the feedback form. The registered participants who have attended the lecture sessions will receive the e-certificate through email within a week. So thank you all for joining. Thank you.